Okay. I have to close out all my screens here.
Okay, see you guys.
Okay. So thank you for calling in tonight to our spring quarterly call. I sent out an agenda in advance, and the most up-to-date slides are on the wall that we shared there. And so they'll also be up to view on YouTube for later viewing. We're just going to kind of give a brief overview of things that have happened so far. So in March, I was hired as executive director, and I've been kind of working hard behind the scenes prior to that, but that was my official start date. And then also in March, we had we joined forces with Think Genetic. It's a platform to help spread awareness to rare diseases, and they have a ton of different resources available to patients for various rare diseases, and homocystinuria was one of the ones that they featured. So we are listed as a resource for patients when they go search homocystinuria on their webpage. And then in April, we had our webinar with Kim Chapman, and that was then uploaded to YouTube. And we've had quite a bit of shares and views of that according to our data that we were able to collect. And we had 33 people register. Most were patients, are parents of patients. And then also in April, we became a member of the Global Genes Rare Foundation Alliance. So we hope to be able to partner with them more here in the soon-to-be future. And then in May, we added, well, this month, we added 2 more medical advisors, John from Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and we also added James Weisfield Adams from Children's Hospital of Colorado. We are excited to have them on board, and they have a strong background already with homocystinuria, and they have their own special place in there. So we're excited to join them, and we hope to get them involved here soon. We're hoping to do possibly another webinar with them in the fall. And then we're going to move on to our communication here. We've changed things up a little bit and tried to improve things. So on our website, we've condensed some of our news because it was starting to take over. So now we have a new news and events banner. And so all the most recent HCU news and events can be found there. We've added a contact register and a community forum. And I'm going to elaborate more on that in just a second here. And we've also added it's a HCU checklist. We've added assistance programs and videos as well. And so I'm going to kind of go through here. The contact register is designed to help, I hate to say collect data about our patients, but a lot of that is what it is for. It's to help us plan and to make sure we're serving the needs of the community as best as possible. And so one way to do that is through the contact register, and it lets us know where our patients are centered, if it's mostly a younger demographic or if it's an older demographic, are they seen by a clinic, were they caught by newborn screening. There's a lot of information that we need in order to help improve the lives of our patients and also to make sure that we're doing our very best to serve you. And then with the community forum, we do have that on our site as well, and that is essentially a platform for people to post questions as well. And so we did open that up before the webinar, but unfortunately, we did not have a lot of feedback from that. So I don't know, Kristen or Pam, were either of you aware of the community forum on the website prior to our call?
I knew that there was a community forum, but I think when I looked at it, it wasn't quite open yet, but that was a while ago. So,
okay.
But I might take advantage of that now that I know it's working up and working.
So the idea behind the community forum was to have it a little bit more private than Facebook, just because I know sometimes we don't always feel comfortable asking more of a personal question on Facebook, just because Facebook is a public forum. And as much as I know our Facebook groups are closed, there's always the people who sneak in there that don't necessarily belong. And so we are allowed to screen who is in our community forum, and we can block users if necessary. I don't think that's going to be
part of it might be, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, but too, it's just that our community, we're trying to grow it and everything, but we're not a real huge community either. So maybe that's one reason why people haven't used it a whole lot is because maybe I don't know, maybe they figured that there's not going to be a whole lot of response because there just isn't a whole lot of people yet that are involved in this, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing this, I understand. So, we can get it to grow and let people know there is help out there. So
I appreciate that feedback, and that was one of my thoughts, too, is maybe we don't have the numbers yet to really see a good result yet.
Yeah.
And I know that also technology has changed quite a bit since the forum platform first came, because it used to be community forums, and then came social media. And so I think we have to figure out how to balance both of that.
Danae, are we sure that the patients in the community really would prefer a closed forum that requires them to both register through the contract registry as well as go to our website as opposed to, get a Facebook automatic notification or something? Are we sure that that's what they would desire? I can't speak positively. I know some people are hesitant to post on Facebook, although there's definitely a lot of sharing going on there too. But there's a lot of different forums outside of Facebook that are closed that you have to register for. And our advocacy consultant and I were talking about that too, because there's one platform that has like almost 200 homocystinuria patients, and that's outside of Facebook. And it's a forum, but you have to register for it, and it's kind of like our process. But I can dig more into that and make sure that that is what they want, because if there's no need for it, we definitely don't need to have that there, because it would be better to have all that information on Facebook, then so be it. I mean, it's not going to negatively impact us in any way. The one thing that's nice about a community forum is the information is a little bit easier to go back to and reference versus Facebook. Once it's on Facebook, it's a little bit harder to reference if you're going back, say, 3 months and trying to find what someone had posted. So I can talk a little bit more to different members of the community and find out how they would prefer best to engage. Yeah, and I'm only asking just because of the very low sign-up. Is it still just 2 people?
I think so at this point.
And you're one, and I'm 2.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we could keep it up there, and then if our numbers increase and we still see a lack of interest, then we can take it down. But I think right now our numbers are still pretty low in general. So as we gain ground here, maybe we can move forward, and hopefully people will register that aren't necessarily even on Facebook, because I know there's a lot of people that aren't on Facebook. And the younger generation is steering away from Facebook, actually.
Yeah, they're more Instagram these days.
Yeah, Instagram and Twitter, and it's because they don't want their parents, like, hovering over them. Just from what I hear from younger kids, and I just thought that was kind of funny. I'm like, oh, you don't want to be friends with your mom on Facebook? I wonder why. So
I think after they get to be a certain age.
Yeah.
My kids get embarrassed. My kids tell me I'm the only one that posts photos of them on Facebook.
Yeah, and
that's, I think, what we're finding is we might need to find ways to appeal to different age groups. So I'll find out and see what is another way we can get engaged too. That's maybe a community forum is not the thing. Maybe I know so I'll get to it, but we're also on Twitter. Maybe we need to find a way to engage via Instagram, or I'm not positive what all the different social media platforms are currently. I'm not really that in the loop in terms of those, but we'll have to explore.
I suspect that the one issue is, Pam just said it, but I know others have told you, people come to our website, they see community forum, they click on it, and there's nothing there. And they're not motivated to fill out the contact registry. And so is there a way to make it easier for people to be able to?
So are you saying you need to do the contact register first before you can get on the community forum? Is that the way it works?
So when you go to the community forum, it will take you to the contact register, and then it will have you fill it out. A lot of it is optional in the contact register, because we understand that not everyone's going to feel comfortable filling in some of those fields. But there's some areas that are required, and then it allows you access to the community forum. And at some point, there may be things that are also added to the website that are hidden, unless if you do have a contact register, just because not everyone who shares content with us is always going to feel comfortable sharing it with the public, such as I know HCU Network Australia, some of the people who host their webinars, they don't want them public. They want them set as private. So that's one way we could handle that as well. But right now it's just the community forum that the contact register allows you access to.
Okay. I'll take a look at it myself.
Yeah. I think I'm going to move on just because there's a lot of content to cover. And then we also have under resources, I think it's under resources, is it HCU checklist. So this checklist allows patients, well, not patients because they have not been diagnosed, people who suspect they have homocystinuria to go through a checklist and see what symptoms they have in common, and they can fill this form out, to print it out, and take it with them to their either primary care physician, or there's also the link to the clinic, and they can find a metabolic center in their state to hopefully follow up with and inquire if indeed their symptoms do warrant the test for homocystinuria. I find most patients, clinic providers are willing to listen to them, at least here in the U.S., and test if they have enough of the symptoms in line. And then also with communication we added to our website is there's some assistance programs that are coming down the pipeline here. We added HealthWell Foundation as an assistance program. They assist with the cost of the cystidine and also other medical expenses as well. There's other assistance programs that I have added to the site that are more directly related to the formula companies. Each formula company has their own assistance program, and I don't think there's currently any assistance programs for food. I'm not positive though about that. So, but each of those companies is willing to work with you to try to make sure that you are able to afford your formula if your state does not already cover it, or your insurance. And then lastly, we've added videos to our website. So under resources, there is a video tab, and all videos are on there as well. And then, okay. So on the next slide, I have our continued communication. And part of one of the things that we launched recently is we have now a monthly newsletter, and it also kind of has in each newsletter we have a recap what we're currently working on and future things. And another thing that will be coming here this summer is health tips.
we have established a relationship with a nutritionist, and she is going to write some helpful tips to help stay on diet. We've reached out to another clinic that is going to help with mental health tips because I know there's a lot of questions from the community about proper mental health things too. Like, does high levels affect your mood? Simple things like that. So they will be able to provide us with articles to include in our newsletters as well. And those will rotate between diet, health, mental health, and they'll be on a quarterly basis that we rotate.
So with this monthly newsletter, is that something that you sign up for, or is it just going to be on the website every month, or how does that work?
So part of it, you're currently enrolled in our mailing list, and so if you signed up in that mailing list on our website, you are automatically included in that monthly newsletter. And what I have tried to do, so you're not inundated with a million emails from us, I try to get all the events for the month into the monthly newsletter, and then a week before an event, I send out just a reminder that it's the last call to sign up for an event. So that way you're not receiving 10, 20 emails from us each month because I don't want to fill up people's inboxes and then just start to have them ignore us because we know that there's enough email without us clogging things up.
Okay.
And then also under communication.
Janae, before you leave that, so I know that those who sign up on the website, just to give us simply their email, will get it. Do you also post it on a link to it on Facebook when it goes out?
Yes. So the client that we use to compose our newsletters and send out emails and mass communication, it'll provides us with a link, and I was able to share that via Facebook and Twitter. So those who are not on our mailing list can also receive it via other avenues as well.
Right.
So I think that's kind of a nice feature because we can hit a lot more people.
Good.
And then I'll go on to social media. So we now have a Twitter account. And we also have a YouTube account. So we were able to our recording from our webinar was uploaded to our YouTube account. We've also added some patient stories in there as well from the Prague conference, along with some other helpful videos. And we will be uploading our call tonight to our YouTube channel as well, hence it being recorded right now. And so we will continue to add resources to our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel can be accessed via our website, HCUNetworkAmerica.org. There's a little social share button on the right-hand side, and it has the little YouTube logo on it. And it's on most of our emails, too, at the footer. And then moving on, we do have a new brochure. We are working on kind of updating things. So one of the things was we needed a new brochure because we've kind of moved on past some of our beginning goals and so forth. So our new brochure is on our website as well, and it will be available for clinics as well here shortly. Then, okay, so we have some ongoing projects we're working on as well. We are constantly working on contact with new clinics. And so, what is going on with my slide? There we go. So currently we have made contact with 13 clinics and counting. We have definitely reached out to way more clinics than that, but as most of us are aware, doctors are very busy, and so we're also reaching out to the dietitians at the clinic because a lot of the patients have much more contact with the dietitians than the doctors, especially for the ones that require the low-protein diet. So we've had a good response from the dietitians as well as the clinicians. And so we have more calls planned here soon. So I foresee this expanding here. We are starting a new approach, though, as well. And so the new approach asks for the community's help. And that means if you would be willing to set up a call with us and your clinic and kind of be the liaison for us, because you already had that relationship established with your clinic. And so we know that this is sometimes the easiest way to build up that partnership is when we already have a patient in common. So we would hope that we can continue to collaborate with the clinics and with the patients as well as working separately on our own, because we know not every clinic is going to have patients at this time, and they may have at one point when they may in the future. So we want to make sure that we are reaching out to everyone. Another ongoing project that we're working on is newborn screening. And currently, every state tests for homocystinuria, but unfortunately, about 50% of cases are missed by newborn screening, which is a very large number of patients. For those who are missed by newborn screening, it takes an average of 4.5 years to get an accurate diagnosis. And there's some little facts here that I wanted to include, such as Harvey Mudd in his paper in 1985 had noted that by 10 years of age, without treatment, 55% of B6 responsive and 82% of non-responsive will have dislocation, which is how many patients present and are diagnosed. And then as well, there's the fact that by 15 years without treatment, 12% of B6 responsive and 20% of non-responses will have a thrombolic, I can't pronounce it, event. It's not coming out. So most of the patients, unfortunately, when they're not picked up by newborn screening and their symptoms aren't severe, the biggest things that tip off doctors where they get their diagnosis is through lens dislocation and through either a heart attack or a stroke. So it's very important that we work on our newborn screening initiatives as an organization. So our next step is to figure out how do we achieve better results. And so we are currently working to find out, first off, does every state or every newborn screening lab have the same cutoff for methionine and homocysteine? Another thing that we're researching is, along with that, is what states or labs, I should say, have two-tier testing, meaning they're tested at birth and then at another stage. And do they find this effective? How many patients are actually picked up this way as well? And so we're trying to find out these things so that we can hopefully get that 50% of cases that are missed by newborn screening reduced significantly, because we all know that the sooner you are diagnosed and the sooner you are treated, the better the prognosis for the patient. Margie, did you have anything that you wanted to add to newborn screening?
Yeah, on the screening and talking to some of the experts globally, they're all sensitive to this because they're very comfortable that if they can diagnose a patient earlier, they can really prevent the sequelae. And so there are things that are being thought about, such as in the state of, I think it's Minnesota or Michigan, I forget which, they're doing a second test, not just the methionine heel prick, but they're also testing total homocysteine rate at birth to see, do they pick up more patients? And if they do, then we might be able to convince this federal committee that decides on which newborn screening tests are done, that it's worthwhile to do that. So that that is going on. And I think there's a Mayo site so it's probably Minnesota actually, because I think it was Mayo that's working on that. And then I think it was Maryland that is repeating the methionine test at 2 weeks of age instead of just 2 days, to see if that picks up any additional patients. And I know it was Kim was telling me, Kim Chapman, about that one. She said she didn't think there were any more patients picked up at this point. But if there are, then that could be something that could change. But the real benefit would be if we could come up with justification of doing total homocysteine levels instead of methionine levels. That's believed to be much more sensitive and more likely to get the pyridoxine responsive patients. But it's a more complicated test to do because you have to process the blood within like 30 minutes of taking the blood sample, and it's therefore more expensive. And so the committee in the U.S. and similar sorts of bodies in other countries that decide what to test have to look at, is it really going to lead to that many more patients, and how much will it cost us, and how prevalent is this disease? So that's really the intent of the project that we're starting to see if there are any opportunities that we could at least advocate for things that have been shown to work elsewhere.
Wonderful. Thank you for adding that, because that definitely, I think, helps explain things better. Okay, so then we'll go on to things to come. One of the things that we're working to have hopefully finished here within the next month or so, at least the first part of it, is a patient toolkit. And the part that will be finished first is the physical kit. And this will be designed for newly diagnosed patients, and it will have various things, a binder to help keep track of your labs and all the paperwork that goes with your genetic disorder. So it'll probably have diet sheets in there too, and some information on how to properly track your protein or methionine, depending on how your clinic does it, and different tools to help get you off on the right foot. And then eventually we will have an online version too. We're exploring that, but it's a much more lengthy process, because we're hoping we can kind of touch all the different points from diagnosis to newborn, to transitioning to foods, to my child starting school, to middle school, to high school, to college, and so forth. So the online version will be far more comprehensive, and therefore take a little bit more time. But we will get that rolled out here, hopefully within the next few months. And then we're also working on an infographic. It's to help spread disease awareness about homocystinuria. And we are aware that everyone presents differently and their treatment does look different. So we're trying to get an overall scope to kind of present to the world of what homocystinuria looks like. So we should have that completed by the middle of July at the latest. And then we are excited to announce that we will be having October as our first HCU Awareness Month. So there will be different activities that we will be doing online, and I will have more information about that as the month approaches. And so we chose October because we were first recognized as a nonprofit during that month. So it's kind of a special month to us. And we find it's not completely crazy with the winter activities, and it's not so busy with the summer too. So, and it's still relatively nice in October. And leading with that, we are hoping to have more community involvement with fundraisers as well. So we are hoping that there will be a few people that can take on some fundraisers within the community that they will host. We can help spread their fundraisers online and to our contact list as well. We do ask that you have them to us 2 weeks prior to a newsletter because I will include them in it. And I will include their efforts on our website, on our Facebook page, and on Twitter. So I'm more than glad to help kind of boost your event per se. But we are looking for key community leaders. And I know Kristen has talked about some marathon type things that she is considering doing for fundraising for homeless area, and I am willing to take this on as well. So if you're looking for ideas on how to set up a fundraiser, there is a section under our News and Events tab. So if you click on News and Events, there's a sub-tab for fundraising, and it has a couple pages of ideas to work from. And if you do have an event idea or would like to collaborate together, our contact email address is also included in the slide. And then our big news is we have an official date for our HCU conference and location. So the possible topics and speakers all are to be confirmed, but we do have them kind of etched out here. So our first Homeless Area Conference will take place April 21st and 22nd. It will probably be a day-and-a-half conference. It will be in Westford, Massachusetts at the Westford Regency. And our possible topics and speakers include Kim is going to present again on the CBS guidelines. And we will also have Margie presenting. She's been working very hard on the HCU research map and strategy. And this is a huge undertaking that kind of outlines everything that's going on in homeless area and the things that are coming down the pipeline, and set forth priority to them too. So this, I think, will be very exciting for the community to see unveiled because I think there's a lot of exciting things in the works. And then we will also have a topic about homeless area and the brain presented by Susan Weisbrunn. Susan Weisbrunn is a clinical psychologist at Boston Children's. It will either be her or one of her doctoral students. And her doctoral student that she currently has is also heavily invested in metabolic. The whole clinic there at Boston Children's is amazing. So we will also have someone talk about transitioning into adulthood. So this doesn't just mean like the people who are on their own after college or in college. This includes transitioning your high schoolers and preparing them to kind of go forth out into the world and move into college and to live independently, because this is an area many patients struggle. I know as a patient, this is where I struggled, just because there's no one to kind of look out for you. Well, they still look out for you, just it's in a different aspect. We will also have an update on the natural history study that is going on, and we're hoping that Dr. Levy can present on that, as Boston Children is one of the centers. And then I have been in talks with Orphan Technologies, and they said they should be able to give us an update by then also on the enzyme replacement therapy that they are working on. And then we would like to also have someone talk about dietary best practices, and I would also hope to include a patient panel, because I think a patient's perspective is definitely something that's very important, because as a patient, I think we all realize that we are the ones that live and breathe this disease and have to live with it on a daily basis. And we have some wonderful examples in our community of people who have taken this homeless area on and really tackled it and have done a wonderful job and could be great examples and mentors to the community. And another thing that we're working on is a reception at Cambrook Therapeutics. Their headquarters are about 10 minutes from the hotel. And so they are willing to kind of do a tour of their facility and also have some like light hors d'oeuvres and for us just to kind of have more of a social event. too, for anyone that is welcome. And then, whoops, my slides aren't shifting here. Oh, okay, I just accidentally skipped a slide on my end. Now I'm back to it. So the next one was HCU research. So there's some exciting things that are going on. Currently, there's the natural history study. There's currently 3 locations: Boston Children's Hospital, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and Emory University. Boston is in Massachusetts, and Philadelphia in Pennsylvania, and then Emory is in Georgia. And these are huge metabolic clinics that have quite a few patients already in there. These studies are open to any patients in the U.S., but there is follow-up that is required. You would need to be there in person. They are working on more clinical sites, and they should have those released. I would think it takes about 4 months, I think, before they can add to go through the whole process. So probably by early to mid-fall, we should have a few more sites added to the natural history study as well, but we are not aware of what they are. They have to go through the process of being approved. Also, yes.
I just add on the natural history study, there are also a few sites in England and Ireland that are participating. These are just the U.S. sites that are listed. But it might also be helpful for me to explain why it's so important to do this study.
Yeah.
You know, when you're looking at what's the potential impact of the disease, and especially you're trying to justify bringing a new treatment to market, the regulatory authorities really want information on, well, what will happen if we don't have this product? Because, you know, regulatory authorities like the FDA are always worried about, you know, any new product could have side effects, et cetera. How do we know that it's really needed? And, you know, how do we take the results from your study that show, well, here's how patients do over the course of 2 to 3 years in a trial? What might have happened if this drug weren't available? So you try to have a placebo group in your study, but there are some things like looking at, can this therapy prevent blood clots? You really can't do a clinical study to prove that because it might take 15 years for someone you know, who doesn't have controlled levels to have a blood clot. And so a lot of times regulatory authorities will go by a natural history study and say, well, okay, I understand that if someone's homocysteine level is elevated for 15 years and they have a blood clot, then if your drug can prevent the elevation, keep the levels normal, even though you can't prove to me fewer blood clots because you can't do a 15-year study and keep people on placebo to prove a difference, I will accept that because you have a good natural history study. And unfortunately, the only study we have is what Harvey Mudd published in the 1980s, and that was before betaine was even on the market. And there wasn't as much knowledge about the importance of controlling protein intake and how you do that, et cetera. So, you know, if anyone tries to say to the FDA or other countries' regulatory bodies, well, look at these data, you know, 15 or 20% will have a blood clot in this time period, the FDA is going to say that's just not believable because that was too long ago when treatment was very different. So that expresses or that explains why a study like this is so important. It will establish, you know, what has happened for patients out there who didn't achieve control because either they weren't diagnosed or they were diagnosed and they weren't compliant, and then how well do patients do who are controlled. The other thing it could help to do is to establish what is the right level of homocysteine. We know that the guidelines say bring it down to 50 if you're pyridoxine responsive, but the goal is 100 if you're not. And the biggest reason for that, I had a phone call last week with Andrew Morris on the research map. The biggest reason to say keep it at 100 if you're not pyridoxine responsive is in addition to not having data that definitively shows you're worse off if it's, around 100 or less than 100, the biggest reason is they're worried that you'll do harm, that you will restrict the diet so much that you will actually have an unhealthy patient because of the diet impact. So if treatment were available, then, Andrew said, I would say go lower if you can without harming the patient. So it's really a trade-off. So, the natural history study may help inform that maybe there's more recent data that, 100 is not the best level, that, 50, 60, 70, 80, somewhere in between is the best level. But until they have data to show that, they don't want to put patients at risk by forcing such low protein intake that you could actually cause health problems with that.
Mm-hmm. I think that was a good explanation of the natural history study because there's so much to it. And I know there's a lot of confusion about what is a natural history study versus a patient registry. So I think that captures it nicely. And then also for HCU research, NORD awarded Warren Kruger of, I think, was he with the Fox Chase Institute?
Yeah.
Okay. He's with the Fox Chase Institute for a study of low dose, I think it's
bortezomib.
Okay. It's like you have the pharmaceutical background. You probably can do a lot more.
You want me to explain too?
Yeah. Would you be able to explain what his study essentially accomplishes? Just because I don't think most people are going to be familiar with either of those large, complicated words that start with B.
Yep. So what this study is about, bortezomib is a drug that's been on the market for many years. Its brand name is Velcade, and it's used for multiple myeloma. And Warren did a study in mice 6 or 7 years ago because he had a hypothesis that this could help to stabilize the CBS enzyme. There are some patients who make no enzyme because of the type of defect that they have, but many patients make some enzyme, but it doesn't stay in the bloodstream long. It's considered unstable because your genetic defect causes problems in the folding, of the enzyme into the protein. So Warren had a hypothesis that this particular drug, because of how it worked to attach to an enzyme and stabilize it, might be helpful for homocystinuria. So he studied in his mouse model 18 different defects that cause homocystinuria, and he found in 16 out of 18 the drug corrected the defect and restored enzyme activity and normalized homocysteine levels. But no one is willing to try to bring this drug forward to use with homocystinuria because it's toxic. It's used for multiple myeloma because that's a blood cancer and you can die from it if you don't treat it right away. So it is used for that, not necessarily chronically, although some patients do take it chronically. But, in the case of homocystinuria, obviously you'd have to treat an infant at birth with a pretty toxic compound, and they'd have to be on it, for the rest of their life or until there was something better. So Warren also saw with this other class of drugs, of which bimoclimol is one of them, that they had some activity for homocystinuria, but in his mouse model it wasn't high enough to be used on its own. So he now has a hypothesis that maybe if you use a low dose of bortezomib that doesn't have side effects with this other drug, bimoclimol, maybe those two combined would work for homocystinuria. And he thinks they could be tablets or capsules as opposed to some of the other therapies. Like enzyme replacement therapy will probably be subcutaneous injection. And so NORD awarded a grant. They have a competitive process where they will issue a request for proposals for a given disease area. So they did that for homocystinuria about 8 months ago, and actually Tara made me aware of it from HCU Network Australia. She had seen it online. And so I made Warren aware of it because I knew he was looking for research funding, and he applied, and his proposal was chosen. So he now has the grant and has started that study in mice. Danae, you want me to cover the last one, the global research map, as well?
That would be great.
Yeah. So Danae's mentioned this already, but one of the things that most patient disease organizations do is put together an analysis of all the research going on globally, because otherwise there's really no other organization that would do that. And so it's a good way to understand all the different treatments being researched, as well as to then use it to figure out what do we as patient support and advocacy organizations think are the most important projects that we want to make sure get funded, get support from the community in terms of getting enrollment, et cetera. And if we are able to fundraise, like many disease organizations do, to provide some research grants, which ones should we really be focused on? And so we've been working on this for 7 to 8 months now, and we're doing this combined with HCU Network Australia. We're jointly funding it, but I've taken the lead on it with my background in pharmaceuticals. And we had a consultant helping us, but her work is now done and I'm finishing it up. And we've, in addition to doing literature searches and searches of clinical trial databases, which she was very good at doing. She's an MD, PhD with experience in rare disease product development. So we have a very technical document that has all the right references for this and summarizes all the research. But in addition to that, we've interviewed 10 global experts, either researchers in academic settings. Some of them are researchers with biotech or pharma companies that are working on homocystinuria. And then I just finished 2 more interviews with 2 clinicians, Kimberly Chapman and Andrew Morris, to give us a clinician's perspective on what do they think the most important projects are. So I'm now finalizing this report, and it will go out one last time to all of those interviewed. And then we're putting together a scientific advisory board to then give input on the key priorities. And they would also, if we are able to fund any grants in the future, they would then be able to review the proposals and pick the best ones. And so we're establishing this global board that Victor Kosick from Prague has agreed to chair. And we're hoping to hold the first meeting at the meeting in Rio in September, where all the global researchers in metabolic diseases will be meeting, and where Tara Morrison is setting up a patient expert meeting for Latin American patients and physicians. So that's what that is.
Wonderful. I'm really excited to see that kind of takeoff. I think that will help move things even forward at a faster pace once we get that advisory board to kind of steer things in a direction that we can all agree upon. Can I go back and ask you a question about the Warren Kruger study?
Right.
So I'm not sure if are you familiar with the Open Act that they're trying to pass?
The Open Act? No.
Okay, so there's a current bill that has been they're trying to get passed essentially. They've named it the Open Act, and what it does is it takes current drugs that are currently on the market, and they're branded for one disease, and obviously this is in the case with for this drug that he currently has. It's for melanoma. So I'll use that as an example. So there's a drug on the market that they see for melanoma, but they think they have this idea that it could work for homocystinuria, which is exactly what this is. And for what the Open Act is suggesting is that for a drug that already is in existence and has passed FDA guidelines and regulations, it would kind of give them a fast path to getting the drug approved for a different disease or disorder or whatever it may be, assuming that obviously the drug works. And so they would obviously still have to have the trials. But being that it's already been FDA approved, they know about the side effects and what could happen.
Right.
Do you think if his study does prove to be effective, and assuming this bill would be, do you think this is something that could be fast-tracked because it's already an FDA-approved drug, or do you think the timeline would probably be just as long as if it was a new drug starting all over?
Yeah, so I'd have to learn more about the Act and what it really changes, because my experience with drugs that are already on the market and you have a new potential indication is that all you have to do is to do a clinical study that proves that it works in that new indication. So that's something that pharmaceutical and biotech companies have been doing for years. And so it may be that they're trying to say, well, maybe the trials don't have to be as long as the FDA has been asking for, because they don't make you do additional safety studies unless you're recommending a higher dose. So theoretically, I'm sure if they're going to all the trouble of putting this bill forward, there must be something that speeds up the process. So it may just be maybe the FDA commits to a faster review time as opposed to the standard review time, which can be, up to, I think, 9 months, sometimes a year. So if theoretically it does speed things up, it could help for the bortezomib, but bimoclomol is not on the market. And so it wouldn't help for that. Now, on the other hand, bimoclomol is a precursor or a prodrug of another drug called arimacromol, and that is actually in a phase 3 trial for Niemann-Pick's disease. But we couldn't get access to it because the company that's researching it, Orphazyme in Europe, doesn't want to risk something weird showing up in a study for homocystinuria that didn't show up in Niemann-Pick's disease, and they could prevent it from getting on the market. So it's a conservative approach a lot of companies take to say, I'm not going to let anyone test my drug for another use until I've got it on the market, because I don't want anything interfering with my initial, priority. So we still would have to get either arimacromol, which will be further ahead, so that may actually be easier. That could be on the market, let's say, in 3 years, I'm guessing, if the clinical trial ends in the next year or two. And so if this study is positive, then maybe we can get the company, as soon as they get arimacromol on the market, to agree to test, low-dose bortezomib with arimacromol, and then this bill that you're referring to, if it does shorten the timeline, even if it's just for review, then, that could help both get to market sooner.
Okay. That's exciting. I wasn't aware that something like that is already in existence, so I'm going to have to look at it a little bit more to see what is different than what's already out there. But I know that that specific act is more, it's being pushed more by a group where their illnesses or their diseases, it's essentially a terminal diagnosis. Where ours could be if it's not treated, but we're at least lucky to have treatment. So so thank you for that explanation. I appreciate that. And then the last one is questions. So I don't know if Margie or anyone on the line, really, does anyone have any questions for us?
I can't think of anything.
Okay. I do have in the PowerPoint, I do have the last slide is our contact information. And you can definitely feel free and contact me if you have a question. If it's not one I'm able to, I'll definitely investigate. I might ask Margie, or if it's more of a even more in-depth medical one, we can consult Kim Chapman too, if it has more disease-specific questions. So if anyone does have questions either now or in a week or in a month, they're more than welcome to reach out to us as well, and we'll be glad to get those questions answered as quickly as we can. So I think that is it for tonight. Thank you to those who were able to call in. And we'll have our next call. So this was our spring call. So we'll probably do another call late into the summer when things kind of slow down, because I know people go on vacation and so forth. So we'll plan on another call probably for late August, early September. So
Thank you again, everyone, for joining. I'm going to stop the recording at this point and